Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting Teamsters1932.org/organize to start today.
KCAA Loma Linda. The Legacy KCAA 1050 AM and Express 106.5 FM.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. Former President Trump's in a New York City courtroom this morning for a civil fraud trial brought by Attorney General Letitia James. Natalie Migliori reports.
Before walking into the Manhattan courtroom, Trump blasted James, saying the trial could have been brought years ago, but they waited until he announced a run for re-election.
They're all corrupt people. Frankly, our country is corrupt. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. We're going to straighten it out.
James confident about the case.
The law is both powerful and fragile. And today in court, we will prove our case.
Last week, the judge overseeing the case ruled that Trump had been overvaluing his properties and is liable for fraud. The trial is set to determine remaining accusations.
President Biden is glad a government shutdown was averted, but he says it shouldn't have come down to the wire. The president accused what he referred to as extreme MAGA Republicans of trying to walk away from the deal. Student loan holders need to start making payments again this week. Brad Ford has more.
Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson's joining 19 other attorneys general in asking the Biden administration to increase protections for borrowers. Payments have been paused for 3.5 years during the pandemic. Millions of loans have been assigned to other loan servicing companies. Borrowers report extreme delays in reaching customer service.
The jackpot for the Powerball lottery drawing is now up over $1 billion. Only 3 other Powerball jackpots have been higher than the current estimated $1.04 billion pre-tax payout. The next drawing is tonight, with a cash option takeaway of just over $478 million. Taylor Swift showed up in New Jersey Sunday with quite the entourage to watch Travis Kelce and Kansas City beat the Jets. The pop star was spotted at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford cheering for the Chiefs tight end with Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and Sophie Turner by her side. Last week, the Shake It Off singer was with Travis Kelce's mom cheering on her rumored new beau. Kansas City won both games, edging the New York Jets 23-20. You're listening to the latest on NBC News Radio.
Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Looking at a government shutdown in, less than a day. Do you think the Republicans are going to come up with anything? Do you think they're going to pull a rabbit out of their well? No. I have no idea how you're getting out of this because I'm still not sure why we're in it. There was a deal. There's no deal. Crazy Republicans want to hold the country hostage for why? Well, because they can. That seems to be what it is. And, the party of chaos, the party of no really original ideas or thoughts or policy visions, this is what we get. So, surprise! We will see a couple million people go without paychecks. We will see pain and suffering. And all because, well, I'm still not 100% sure. Because this is one of those things, if you're Kevin McCarthy, you can make a deal. There's got to be a handful of Republicans who are going to go, this is a bad idea. Let's work something out with Democrats. Let's get something done. Put it before the floor. Get the 218 votes we need. Move it over to the Senate. Get it done. And get back to bickering over Joe Biden's tennis shoes. Get back to making things up and lying in impeachment. Get back to your core, your base. It's crazy times. Today, the UAW expanded its strike. Another 7,000 UAW members, auto workers, will find the picket line. And look, now they're targeting Ford and General Motors. While Jeep kind of got a pass, Stellantis is evidently making some progress. So we'll see. Hopefully this comes to an end and a reasonable deal. But you've got like over 25,000 auto workers on strike out of the 146,000, 150,000 members, wherever they're at. And I like what Sean Fain has been saying. I like the words coming out of his mouth. Again, what we've been saying here on the program for years. It's not red hat, blue hat. It's not right, left. It's up, down. It's corporate greed. It's billionaire greed versus the rest of us. It's that 99% frame that we got during the Occupy Wall Street era. It's that. And while they keep moving us back to red hat, blue hat, they keep moving us back to it's Democrats versus Republicans. No. The color that matters is green. And they've been robbing us blind. And this is where Sean Fain, he's not the greatest speaker. He doesn't grab me, and he's not the orator of our time, but the words are important. And he said, look, our union was essential in building what was called the arsenal of democracy. Just like 80 years ago, he said, today our union is building a different arsenal of democracy. But this war isn't against some foreign country. The front lines are right here at home. It's the war of the working class versus corporate greed. We are the new arsenal of democracy. The workers are the liberators, and our strike is the vehicle for liberation. He said, I want to be clear about one thing about the president's historic visit. The most powerful man in the world showed up for one reason and one reason only, because our solidarity is the most powerful force in the world. He said, we can stand together united in the cause of economic and social justice. When we stand together, there is nothing we cannot do. And that's the right language. That's the right call to action. It's not red hat, blue hat. It's, hey, we want better opportunities for ourselves, for our kids, for our families. We want good wage jobs. We want job security. We want to make sure that the next generation of jobs are good jobs. We're fighting the robotics, the AI, all of the forces that are coming. There's only one group out there taking this stuff on, and it's the labor movement. And I want them to be more like this. This is the language the labor movement should be grabbing on in every corner. This is a which side are you on moment. He said, we're fed up with corporate greed. We're fed up with corporate excess. We're fed up with breaking our bodies for companies that take more and more and give less and less. He said, our anger is righteous. Our struggle is just. That, again, the language that all trade unionists, all working people should be gathering around. This is a moment for labor to educate its members like never before. This is a moment because get this, I was thinking about this today. Trump went to a non-union facility in Michigan where you're going to love this. The guy who owned the place, there's a picture of him with his kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, up on his shoulders. I've got the exact same picture of my children up on my shoulder holding signs or doing whatever. But he's got his kid up on his shoulders holding a sign that says UAW member. And now, again, this is the owner of the company, a non-union company. So for me, that image should be, UAW if you're listening, your first exhibit in organizing his workers. Because I'll bet you those workers would like better wages, hours, conditions. I'll bet you they'd like to get a little bit more in their paycheck. They'd like their labor to be respected a little bit more. I'll bet you. But it got me thinking that, when you have this moment, you had, Biden going to the picket line, and you had Trump doing his fraud rally with no, I don't think there were any actual UAW members there. Because had there been one, they would have trotted them out and walked them around. And look, I know a lot of UAW members voted for him because they bought into he's gonna save the Lordstown plant. In fact, we met some folks from Lordstown when we did our Working Class Heroes tour who said, look, I'm still mad at him because he told us not to move. He said he was going to save that plant. Don't go anywhere. Don't sell your house. Stay. We're going to save these. And he didn't. The Lordstown lie. So am I surprised that there were no UAW members there? Not really. Because the ones that did vote for him, they internalized what he was saying. They were going to make the UAW great again. He was going to make auto manufacturing great again. And what did he do? Nothing. And it got me thinking that there's really no good reason for any union worker to vote for Donald Trump. There's not. There's no reason whatsoever. If you're thinking about your economics, if you're thinking about putting food on the table, keeping a roof over your head, ensuring that your kids have health care. If that's where your thinking is, I don't know how any right-minded person could go, yep, Trump's my guy. In fact, I don't know that there's a good reason for any working person to vote for Trump, especially knowing that because of his tax scheme, because of his only legislative accomplishment, the billionaire class in this country got 77% wealthier. And I was going through that number, 77% wealthier, a couple of $1 trillion in wealth being accumulated by the handful at the top. And you go, that inflation thing the Republicans have been pointing at Joe Biden about? I don't know. Could that have a little, just something to do with it? The fact that it was a good opportunity to raise prices and put a little coin in their pocket. And the answer is, yeah, it's what they do. But this is one of these moments, and I'm looking at it from, having studied labor history and going back in those times, wondering if the people who were fighting the fights at that era knew that history was in the making. The sit-down strikes of the 30s, the Teamsters in 34 in Minneapolis. Did they know that they were changing the course of history? And I think, if this goes the way that I hope it does, and I think it will, this could be one of those opportunities for our grandchildren to look back and go, this was a turning point. This was the first time in economic history that the working class didn't get totally screwed by technological advancements. And I had a conversation today with somebody who, very angry guy, about my age. And, he basically laid out what I've been saying from the beginning. The reason people like Trump is he hates the same people they do. He's singing the lines that we were told in the 80s that we were going to all do better. Our birthright was solid middle class. We didn't have to do any of those dirty jobs anymore. We were going to all have corner offices and wear white shirts and ties, and it was going to be great. Technology was going to be our friend. And the reality is it's not working out like that. The reality is everyone feels like they're under attack. And this guy said, look, I feel like from every angle we're being attacked. Our way of life. And, when I tried to break it down and going, well, what exactly are you talking about in your life? How has your life changed? Well, it hasn't. But everyone else. And it comes back to, and it's the weirdest things. It comes back to this belief that out there somewhere is all of this incredible change that's going to, force them into who knows what. But they see Trump as the guy who's stuck in the old mentality. He's not going to change. And I got to tell you, I don't know that that's a great thing. I don't. So I look at this opportunity right now to say, hey, you've got a Republican Party that's lost in the woods. They don't even know what they're doing. They can't even play nice in their own sandbox, let alone anyone else's. This is an opportunity for Democrats, for working people, to step forward and say, you know what? It's time for us to make some serious changes electorally. And this is an opportunity for voters to go to the polls and wipe away all of this insanity. Get rid of Trump, get rid of the Republicans in the House, get rid of the crazy. Rid ourselves of the insanity. There was a woman back in the I guess in the 90s, Susan Powder, I think her name was. She was, stop the insanity was her plea. Yeah, it's time. It's time for us to stop the insanity. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Donald Trump was in California today, and the speech he gave, there's so much there. Used the MF word, and I think that was written in. I don't think he winged it. I think that was written in, but he. There's all this talk about Joe Biden not being, Sleepy Joe and, all this stuff and not being a great speaker. And he's not. He's not a great orator. He is someone who's been doing some really good policy stuff and doing some really good work. But yeah, he's not Obama. He's not Clinton. He's not, and he's never gonna be. But Trump gets a pass. And a lot of times, and I've watched a lot of his speeches, most of them, unfortunately, and he rambles in these weird, bizarre ways. And, well, one of them was, evidently he was going on about water. Well, here it is.
But they don't want the water to come down all the way to Los Angeles and the Central Valley, where we're constantly forced to ration. You have droughts. We're rich people in Beverly Hills. We don't feel so sorry for them, but I do actually. They pay millions of dollars in taxes. They take you to shower. They're told to hurry up. You're only allowed a small amount of water when they take a shower. That's why rich people from Beverly Hills, generally speaking, don't smell so good, Typically. You ever notice? They're not great. Their hygiene is not good, but it's forced to be that way. So when you meet somebody with a beautiful house in Beverly Hills, that person is sort of disgusting underneath.
Yeah, that was his thing. And now I'm trying to figure out how is there a leprechaun in the shower keeping track with a stopwatch? I mean, is Joe Biden, got nothing else to do? Is he standing outside the shower door? I don't know. But this, again, is another one of those things. It's like the light bulbs. It's like the stoves. It's you name it. They make something up. They grab a hold of it. And then they make, bizarre narratives. And this is one of those really bizarre things. And it shows get ready for it, because, they're rationing water. They're coming for your water. This is coming. The right-wing spin machine is going to do this. All the while, they're doing all of these kind of crazy stuff. I mean, I look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin had a 16-year-old kid get killed recently in a job he should not have been doing. Now you have Republicans who have introduced a piece of legislation that would eliminate work permits for 14 and 15-year-olds a la Arkansas. Now remember, the kid died, 16-year-old in a sawmill. Now we're not even going to keep track of where these kids work. And the people who are pushing this say, well, this is just a needless administrative barrier. It slows down the hiring process. Really? My kids got work permits. I don't remember it slowing anything down. I remember having to fill out a form. I remember signing it saying, yeah, I'm okay with this. I remember, talking about what the rules were and all that. Yeah, I think it's great. Well, as we say all the time, our Republican friends seem to want to repeal the 20th century, and child labor seems to be front and center of this. And understand, we know who they're going after. For instance, we've been talking about the meatpacking industry. As one analyst said, without child labor, without immigrant child labor, the meatpacking industry doesn't stand on its own. And all they would have to do is pay a little bit more. But that would eat into the profits. And can't have that because we've allowed basically the production of our food supply to be monopolized by a handful of companies with a handful of profiteers who are wildly profitable. And again, the distraction of what we get from people like Trump. And look, I watched his speech from Michigan. Oh, it was painful. There are very few of them that are really painful. That one was. It's everybody on the other side is out to destroy you. They're out there. They're the worst human beings possible. That's their mantra. That's what they push. And they push this narrative of hatred. And they do it well. Understand, they do an amazing job of pushing, as George W. Bush would have said, catapulting the propaganda. Whereas I don't think the left does that. Well, again, you have extremists on every side, but I think right now the Republican Party as a whole has gone way right. Whereas mainstream Democrats are like, hey, you know what? We got to get stuff done. Now, I was thinking about the shutdown that is coming, and I'm about 99% sure that this is going to happen. And I have no idea how it ends. I don't even really know what the actual demands are, where the field of demands are. It's like any negotiation, you generally have parameters. You know where the goalposts are. And then you have to narrow that down. I'm not even sure. I read, Scott Perry's letter, and it's like, okay, that sounds like an internal fight that you can't figure out. If you get your own house in order, if you're going to lead, maybe lead. Maybe figure out what your game plan is. And if you're going to oust your leader, oust them. But don't keep playing this bizarre kind of back and forth game that, we're going to oust him, we're going to leave. We're going to do the childish thing and leave the proposal in the bathroom for some reporter to find. I mean, it's like a bad episode of any horrible reality TV show. Only this is real people's lives. These are real people's jobs. These are their careers. These are their futures. And they're playing with this like, again, it's some kind of reality TV show. And I come back to, why would we elect people who don't believe in government? It's like, hiring a bus driver who doesn't believe, wheels should be round. It's like, wanting to hire an airline pilot who doesn't like to land. This is what we've done. We have put people into power who hate government. And it goes back to the anger that a lot of people my age, especially white, middle-aged males, we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to hate government and, to hate everybody. It's all their fault, because that's the comment I heard most today. Well, it's all their fault. No, it's not all their fault. It's not both sides. There's no both sidesism here. There's one party in control. And it's not the Senate. It's not Biden. I heard that today. Well, why doesn't Biden do anything? Because Biden can't do anything. You know, there's this thing called the Constitution. You may have seen it, may have tripped over it. Someone may have slapped you with a book that you didn't bother to open. But in that thing, it says that all of this stuff has to emanate from the House. So all of this spending has to emanate from the House. There's no other path. Now, the Senate could do their homework and say, here, we've done your homework for you. Pass this. They could do that. They could say, hey, this is something that we would be okay with, but they can't fix this. You can't fix stupid. You have to get rid of them. You have to throw them out, throw the bums out, because even they don't know. You know, why doesn't Joe Biden do something? Joe Biden can't do anything. There's no way to sign an executive order saying, hey, you know, we're gonna fund the government. He can't do that. Doesn't have the power. And this is where, again, again, the people who tell me that we should have have to take a citizenship test to vote. These are the people lecturing me on how we should be funding our government. Now, I understand some people don't want it. Some people want to see chaos. Some people want to see suffering and struggle until it hits them, until it hits their doorstep. And then, can't have that. But I have no idea how this ends. I want to hear your thoughts. If you got a thought, I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. On the other side, get an expert's view on this. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day a mistrial was declared in the case of 16 textile mill unionists in North Carolina. The mistrial sparked 5 days of anti-union vigilante violence. Textile mill workers at Gastonia's Lorry Mill had been on strike since April 1st. They demanded higher wages and shorter work hours, union recognition, and an end to the hated stretch-out system. Soon, textile workers at Bessemer City's American Mill walked off the job in solidarity and joined the National Textile Workers Union. Ella Mae Wiggins was one of the strike leaders at American Mill. She was known for her militancy, but also for organizing black workers into the union. As the strike wore on, mill owners evicted dozens of families from company housing. Wiggins helped set up a tent city. On June 7th, sheriff's deputies attacked strikers who marched to Lorry Mill to call out remaining workers. The police arrived at the tent colony later that evening to disarm them, and Gastonia's police chief wound up dead. Immediately, more than 70 textile union members and leaders were rounded up and arrested. 16 stood trial for the murder of Chief Adderholt. The Anti-Union Committee of 100 smashed up the NTWU headquarters in Gastonia and Bessemer City. They kidnapped, beat, and threatened to kill several union members. The rampage continued as scab forces moved onto Charlotte to raid the offices of the International Labor Defense, who had handled the strikers' case. 5 days into the terror, Wiggins was killed on her way to a union solidarity rally. Outrage over her murder forced mill owners to improve conditions and wages. But the fight to organize would continue for years. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @LaborHistoryIn2.
When megalomaniac multi-billionaire barons of industry suddenly announce that they are boundless geniuses who must remake society, government, and nature, perk up and pay attention. Their grand schemes of social engineering almost always go badly for us non-billionaires. Having spent their careers in the top-down, self-aggrandizing, exploitative corporate culture, they invariably turn to techno-solutions and AI computer models, ignoring such bothersome factors as human dynamics. So look out, for here comes a gaggle of high-tech billionaires from Silicon Valley planning to fix America's cities by building an urban utopia from scratch. They've chosen Solano County, northeast of San Francisco, for their startup city, promoting it as a hybrid of technotopia and European urbanity, free from the gritty realities of, real cities. Their plan, however, did not include informing the people currently living there about their scheme. Instead, they dispatched secret armies of lawyers and developers to snap up the area's rich farmland, preparing to surprise the locals by converting their land, community, and culture into the billionaire's experiment in new urbanism. One of the moneyed schemers declared that, quote, the idea is simple. Found new cities, free from old bureaucratic and legal structures, and explore bold new visions of how government should work. But that's not simple. It's simplistic. Also, wholly anti-democratic and un-American. But it's in keeping with the egomaniacal ejaculations of other self-indulgent richies who want to build cities that float on oceans, that orbit in space, or that are built on Mars. This is Jim Hightower saying, let's send all of them there now. Meanwhile, what if more of our billionaires invested their money in funding real solutions to real problems in the real cities America already has?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Again, I have no idea why this shutdown is happening, but I do know one thing. I do know that Republicans want Granny to go hungry. They literally, I don't know what kind of evil monster thought it's a good idea. Let's cut money for Meals on Wheels. Yeah, that's a great idea, you twits. And this is, again, I don't know what kind of monster would think this up, but I remember during the Bush years, every budget that Bush came out with, there was a really small line item that would give seniors like a bag of groceries, like produce. And I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It was a very small thing, but every budget they tried to pull that out of there. And Bernie Sanders fought to keep it in there because, you know, we want to feed, Granny. We want to keep Granny around. Granny's important. Very strange times, but here to share some thoughts on where we are, why we're here, and maybe how we get out of this mess. I've asked Bobby Kogan to talk with us. Bobby is Senior Director of Federal Budget Policy there at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website. Bobby, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thanks so much for having me on.
So let's start with the big question. Why? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, the short version is that some House Republicans are using this as a tactic to try to get extreme cuts. Basically, this all harkens back to the debt limit issue, which was a couple months ago. We came out of that with a bipartisan agreement on what level we were going to fund the government at. And I'm not even kidding. Within a week, House Republican leadership said, nah, we're not going to stick to this deal that we spearheaded. And so they went to writing bills that were significantly below the deal with really deep cuts. So like 80% cut to like our major education grant to help like poor school districts, 59% cut to the program that kind of helps make sure that all of our drinking water is safe, right? So super huge cuts, really important things. And that obviously wasn't going to happen. And so now this is a tactic that they're using to try to, they say, hey, give us some of what we want or we'll force a government shutdown. And the really weird thing is that they're kind of like out by themselves here. House Democrats, Senate Republicans, the White House, they're all happy and ready to stick to the deal that they all agreed to. Right. The issue is that some House Republicans want to do, crazy cuts.
See, but here's the weird thing to me, Bobby. In a functional democracy, in a functional government, in a functional system, the crazies would be, put off on an island and everybody else would be going a different way. How come we're not, pushing the crazies into the corner and going off in a different way? There's a deal. Everyone agreed to it. And now it's not because of a handful of lunatics.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally right. The really interesting thing is if you put the deal that people actually agreed to on the House floor, it would easily pass. But Speaker McCarthy might lose his job over it, right? If it goes through, it passes with Democrats and a bunch of Republicans supporting it, he could still be kicked out of his job. And so the difficulty here is for him to try to find something where he keeps his job and also we don't shut down.
But here's the thing, and this, again, this is not profiles in courage. In a functional system, the Democrats would go, no, we're not going to let the crazies throw this guy out, that he would be able to keep his job. And again, you put the lunatics, the Scott Perrys, the Matt Gaetz, that crowd, you put them on an island and you leave them there.
Right. So actually, folks, there's starting to be some talk of that. There are articles written, yesterday, the day before, where folks were floating what House Democrats might demand in exchange for helping Speaker McCarthy keep his job or someone else.
I mean, because if
no,
McCarthy
that
gets,
remains to be seen. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
no, I mean, you cut out for a second, so I was jumping in. I mean, if McCarthy gets ousted, there's only going to be another horrible person in that spot. So might as well keep the devil you know instead of going after another one. At least if I'm a Democrat in the House, that's the way I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we'll just have to see what happens. I think that if it comes down to that, I think that they'll demand some power sharing sorts of things. We actually haven't seen anything like this in my lifetime. I don't know how far back you have to go to see kind of such a slim majority where the speaker has no control. As you remember, it took him 15 votes to get there, and he had to make tons of concessions, and that's part of why we're stuck here. And now part of that concession has led to us being stuck between one extreme option and another extreme option. One extreme option is cuts that hurt the American people, and another extreme option is a shutdown that hurts the American people.
So do you want to die quickly or slowly?
Quickly, always. Quickly, always. Slowly is tough.
No, I mean, this is basically the question. Do you want firing squad or hanging? I mean, this seems to be our option in this moment, because what the Republicans are putting out, no Democrat can stand for, and I wouldn't stand for. The kind of draconian, massive cuts that they're demanding are unrealistic, and I got to tell you, there's a part of me, and this is the part of me that goes, I would love them to have the world that they envision, that they want, just so that you could see the pain and suffering that they would cause. The problem is there would be all the pain and suffering.
Yeah, that's right. Kansas actually tried the experiment of doing huge tax cuts that they insisted would pay for themselves, and then it backfired so tremendously that you got some of the most diehard believers saying, well, it turns out we were wrong, and they went and they raised taxes afterwards. But as you say, the difficulty is all the harm that comes along the way. And if we do shut down, we'll see a lot of harm, right? So some things will continue if we do shut down, right? Medicare, Social Security continues, and anything kind of quote unquote necessary to protect life and property will continue. So the FDA would continue checking a lot of our food, but a lot of things don't continue. And what is considered necessary for life and property is up to interpretation by the individual agency. So the EPA does a lot of water inspection, and it's going to stop its routine water inspection. Chemical facilities, hazardous waste sites, right? If you see raw sewage in the water, they'll come and check that out. But it's the sort of thing where things start off pretty bad. Some Head Start centers are going to close. Kids will lose their preschool. NIH has these clinical centers where it takes in sick people who have difficult to treat diseases, and they'll keep their existing patients going, but they probably won't be taking in any new patients if 2013 is the guide there. And so these sorts of things happen immediately, and the longer it goes on, the worse and worse it gets. We have this program called WIC, which helps pregnant moms, and it helps newborns and infants afford healthy food. And it has a contingency fund that's allowed to draw down. It has a week, 2, 3, maybe 4 in it. But after that, roughly 7 million people will suddenly be without food, right? Like, this is really, really tough stuff.
Well, I mean, this sounds like a win for Republicans. It sounds like what they want. I mean, and I'm not being snide here. I mean, this is what they preach. I mean, this is the kind of stuff. These are people who don't believe in government. They run on a platform that they don't believe in government, that government shouldn't do anything. And now they're showing us that, well, they don't want it. They certainly don't want them to do anything.
Yeah, I hope, I hope that we don't go down that path. In the Trump shutdown of 2018 to 2019, right, lasted 35 days, we were 1 week away. We were literally 7 days away from losing SSI, supplemental security income, which helps folks with disabilities, get by. We were 1 week away from missing those February 1st payments. And that would have been a disaster. So there's over 60, I think it's over 70 million, but at least over 60 million people. And there would have just been tremendous human suffering.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show with Bobby Kogan. Bobby's the Senior Director of Federal Budget Policy at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website if you want to take a look at the work that they do there. I got to tell you, I keep coming back to this, this belief that Trump is behind a lot of this stuff. And someone brought up to me today, and I got to ask you, because how much of this affects the federal courts? He's and I know this sounds way out of left field, But there's a part of me that goes, I put nothing past Trump and his loyalists to go, no, we're just going to shut down the hearings. There'll be nothing because we're going to shut it down. Does this go?
Some civil litigation stops. All criminal investigation continues.
All right.
So yeah, his stuff will continue because it is criminal. That said, the judges involved might not be paid. They have some money from fees that they collect, so they might be paid for a bit. But a prolonged shutdown would have the judges unhappy for not being paid. But the criminal investigations will continue.
So let me ask you the other side of this, because since Biden took office, Republicans have been talking about recession, almost fetishizing recession because it's coming, it's always coming. Inflation, all this stuff to try and make us believe the economy's horrible, so that it's all bad for Biden. How much of this do you think plays into any of that? I mean, I know ideologically they want hungry children. They want kids back in in the factories and in the slaughterhouses. I get that they want to kick poor people when they're down. But how much of this is about let's make the economy as bad as we can, because this is going to cost us billions of dollars. It's going to harm the economy in ways that, if it's prolonged, that could possibly, and you're the expert, could it possibly spark a recession?
Yeah, a long enough shutdown would be tremendously painful for the economy. Goldman Sachs estimates it's about 0.2% of GDP per week. Right, so we're losing $20-ish billion per week that it goes on. But this sort of grows, right? Because as I said, some programs can limp by, but eventually they end. And let's say I'm a federal worker. If I know that I'm only going to miss one paycheck, I might spend like normal. But if I don't know when my next paycheck is coming and I miss more and more, I'm going to severely pull back my spending. It's pretty easy to see how that sort of builds into something pretty bad. So. I would say that the economy is in a pretty okay place right now. Obviously, there's a lot more progress to be made. But yeah, prolonged recession would absolutely be bad for the economy.
John sent me an email here during this, while we're talking. He asked if Congress gets paid during the shutdown. So do the Republicans who are causing this, does their paycheck come?
Yeah, so it's this is gonna sound unbelievable, but the members of Congress get paid. The staff do not get paid, but they get paid back when it's all over. But a lot of the janitorial contractors not only don't get paid, but they never get paid back, right? So it gets worse and worse. The lower down the totem pole you go, the scarier it is for many folks. Many of the contractors will never get paid back, and it's some of the most vulnerable folks are the real losers in all of this.
Again, kicking someone while they're down. Now, our military, because I've been asked about this as well. Do the people in the military get paid while this is going on? Is this something that they have to work without paychecks and then they'll be made whole down the road? How does that work?
Yeah, so right now we are set to have the military not be paid. In 2018 to 2019, they were paid because that was only a partial shutdown and the defense bill had already been funded. And in the 2013 shutdown, a day before the shutdown, they passed a special provision to make it so the military got paid, but no one else. But right now that hasn't been passed. So if everything continues the way it is, then the military will not, just like everyone else, the military won't be paid. They will be paid back later, but they won't be paid during it. Though there's one exception, which is that there's one weird thing, which is that we're in the middle of a pay period right now. And so folks who have worked they'll work this week and they'll work next week, but they won't get paid for next week. So when they get their paycheck 10-ish days from now, they'll get a half paycheck because they'll get a paycheck for the first week, but not the second week. But then after that, they just won't get any more paychecks until we start back up again.
Jeez. I mean, I got to tell you, this is no way to run a lemonade stand, let alone the most powerful country in the history of civilization. No, does any other country do this? Anybody else do this kind of insanity? I mean, anyone,
No.
Botswana or some place that I've never heard of and I can't find on a map. Anyone?
No, most countries, if you can't pass a budget, they dissolve parliament and they just hold a new election, right? Because they say obviously passing a budget is fundamental to the government. We're unique here where I don't want to say habitually, but every 4-ish years, 5-ish years, we end up with something. There were 3 in 2018, which was really bad, but yeah, we're pretty unique here.
So what do you think the chances are of it actually happening? Is there an 11th hour ticking bomb kind of 24 scenario. We're going to avert the crisis in the last hour, is because I'm not seeing it yet. But you're the expert here. Is there a way that they can pull the rabbit out of the hat, or another orifice? I don't know. Is it possible?
It is possible. I would say we're much more likely than not to shut down. We've moved in the wrong direction. The way for us to get out is for a whole bunch of people who said, I would never accept that, to change their mind, which can happen. But on the one side, we have the CR, the continuing resolution that keeps the government running. On the Senate side is being stalled by Senator Paul. And on the House side, they say, well, we won't accept that anyway unless you take out all money for Ukraine, and then we might accept it. We'll see. But so far, when Speaker McCarthy has said, oh, yeah, we could pass that, he has been wrong 100% of the time. So it's just really tough to say what it's possible, but it's tough to figure out exactly what would make it happen.
I don't know, man. I'm just, I don't know how we get out of this. Honestly, I don't. Once it starts, how do we get out of this? Because I fear it only gets worse, because it's just this is turned into just a bad reality TV show. And I think what our representatives have learned is that the people who cause the most chaos and are the most obnoxious get the most attention on reality TV. And this is what we've done with Nitwits of DC episode 5. And I think this is where we are.
Yeah. I hope it's I hope that we don't shut down. I hope if we do shut down, it's a really short shutdown. Normally you need something that is breaking for the shutdown to end. Not always, but typically it takes something that's going to break. So in the last shutdown, the TSA were about to en masse, take their vacation. They weren't being paid anyway. And then the entire airport system would have shut down. So then they opened back up the government. So we have to see what would break for us to really open. There is a special path called a discharge petition, but that hasn't happened in decades, so we'll see.
So with that in mind, I mean, and this is kind of the last line of questioning, because I was going to ask you, what can we do? With that in mind, I mean, is that the way forward? Is that what eventually has to happen? That we basically end up with a general strike or something where federal employees go, screw you, if we're not getting paid, we're not coming in, and then shut everything down and force something that is that inevitably how we get out of this, you think?
Yeah, it's possible. It's because something breaks. It's possible that people always say, oh, well, this is the time a discharge petition is going to happen, and it never does. This might be the time, because you only need like 4 or 5 House Republicans to say, okay, I'll sign on. And then the other path is, maybe the speaker loses his speakership, and then that's the path out. It's really tough to say. I just know that a lot of people could be hurt in the meantime.
So since you bring that up, since, let's say he does lose his job, who do they put in that's going to be able to wrangle enough votes to get something over to the Senate, and the Senate's going to accept?
Yeah, it is. This is an unfortunate situation that it's really tough to predict, and a lot of people are going to get hurt.
Sad stuff. But Bobby, I appreciate you taking time for us, sharing your expertise. I sure hope that they pull a rabbit out of somewhere, and that we don't do this because it's stupid. But I fear we're headed on this path. But I appreciate the time.
Rick, thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks so much, Bobby Kogan. He is the Chief Cook and Bottle Washer, the Senior Director of Federal Budget Policy at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website. Want to hear your thoughts right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come and talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1789. That was the day that the United States Congress officially created the United States Army. Not everyone agreed that the U.S. should have a standing army. 2 years earlier, at the meeting that drafted the U.S. Constitution, James Madison warned against a permanent federal army. He told those at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, quote, "A standing military force with an overgrown executive will not long be safe companions to liberty. Since Madison was a strong proponent of a centralized federal government, his caution about the Army was noteworthy. Perhaps these warnings is why it took Congress until the last day of their session to finally approve the measure. In fact, President George Washington had to write Congress not once, but twice to get them to act on the issue. Once it was approved, the first standing army had about 800 members. By comparison, in 2015, the Army had just under 500,000 active duty soldiers. To supplement the small army, Congress also made a provision for the president to call up troops from state militias. The stated purpose for such call-ups was, quote, protecting the inhabitants of the frontiers of the United States from hostile incursions of the Indians. While in federal service, the state militias were supposed to receive, quote, the same as the pay and substance as the regular army. One time, various state militias were used for the forced removal of the Cherokee people from the southeast on the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. State militias were also deployed to break up labor strikes, such is the case in the Homestead Strike in Pennsylvania in 1892. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You know what's amazing to me? Again, you look at the draconian cuts that they're talking about, the SNAP benefits and the WIC and I think the Meals on Wheels thing is probably the cruelest. And I get it. I've been saying for a while, the cruelty is the point. That's their trademark. But these are the people who tell us how religious they are. These are the Christians. And I'm in this moment right now where these extreme religious folks, I don't know, I think we should be voting them out. I don't know why we would elect anyone who runs on, oh, look how Christian I am. Especially when you look at the fact that 39% of adults in this country think that we're living in the end times. 49% of Christians believe that right now we're in the middle of the end times, that there's no future, that any day now it's over. And it's weird when you start thinking about it in terms of, I guarantee we've got people in our Congress who don't believe there's a future for our children, who believe that this is it. I saw a thing on Facebook, Jesus is coming on, and they gave a date and a time. I'm going, not sure where you got that from, not sure where we pulled that out of, but evidently he's either back or, making the trip, or, he was supposed to show up, maybe at, Dealey Plaza with JFK Jr., I don't know. Or maybe he got here and turned around and go, didn't work out well for me last time, I'm not sticking around. I don't know. But why would we elect these people who clearly don't know the words? Feed the hungry, take care of the elderly, heal the sick, that kind of stuff. Because you look at this budget, it's the antithesis of anything that a Christian would support. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it really is. When you get down to the base of it. And I was thinking about this today because I ran into a very, very angry Christian guy, very militant. And look, I always believed religion was and I still do to my core, that your faith is what makes you a better person. To at least want to be a better person, at least want to be more generous and more open and more caring, instead of just mean and angry and vengeful. I seem to remember from my teachings in Catholic school that those were bad things. And yet we've made this weird turn, especially in our politics. And it got me thinking today about, putting people into power who don't believe there's a future. So yeah, of course we're not going to address climate change. Why would we? There's going to be no future. This is the end times. Why would we want to have an education system that's going to educate the next generation? There's no future for them. And this is where the silent majority has to wake up to the reality that we've kind of gone off the rails, and that we need to get back to the bread and butter economic issues. We need to get back to the bread and butter neighborhood issues, the community stuff, the solidarity stuff, the stuff that Sean Fain was talking about. Because ultimately, and this is masterful. Ultimately, what happens while we're fighting these bizarre, crazy battles, we're getting robbed blind. I was talking to this person today, and I'm like, why are you so angry? And basically, what it comes down to is life didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. Our birthright was prosperity. Our birthright was opportunity. Our birthright was to be at the top of the food chain. And life has been a struggle for a lot of people. And, look, I talk about myself. 30 years ago, I had a higher standard of living because the job I had back then in economic terms paid much better wages, had much better benefits. I had more disposable income 30 years ago because the job I did and still do was compensated at a higher rate. And 30 years of stagnation and actual decline has been difficult, especially for people who believed that it was their birthright for their kids to do better. It was their birthright to have the opportunity. And what's happened is the wealth class of this country has just robbed it away, either through inflation or technology that they've pocketed. And right now, we're fighting that fight. But the rest of us got to come along. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you'll find ours.
Pray for rain, but we're gonna do everything we can to make sure that we're bringing every resource to bear that is reasonably necessary to help us deal with this challenge.
New Orleans declares emergency over saltwater intrusion in drinking water. Fracking operations are, quote, devouring America's groundwater amid persistent drought. Plus,
well, there's huge risk. No money, no recovery.
Republicans' government shutdown will suspend critical operations like FEMA disaster recovery.
I'm sure it'll all be fine. That story and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Climate change is real. We got to do something about it.
Yeah, this one's called autumn, sir. So
I'm sorry?
This one's called autumn right now, so yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't make out what you said.
This climate change right now is called autumn, yes.
Yeah, that's the seasons changing, which respectively is not the same thing as the climate changing.
But the joke gets funnier every time Congressman Doug LaMalfa of California tries to tell it. This is your green